Hey friends, welcome to another episode of The Page of Our Lives. Do your kids get a weekly allowance or maybe have a part-time job, yet they always seem to be asking you for cash? You know, no matter how our kids earn income, as parents, we need to help them understand the importance of money and what to do with it. Our guest today is Brian Horvath, someone who has built his career helping people live a more purposeful financial life. Brian joins us to share some very practical tips we can incorporate at home to help our kids and ourselves increase our financial IQ. So let's turn the page and talk kids and money on this episode of The Page of Our Lives. All right. Well, hey, everybody. Welcome to another episode of The Page of Our Lives. Paige and I are super excited today because we have a special guest with us. This is Brian Horvath, who actually Paige and I both know personally. But Brian is a speaker, a consultant, and a coach who is passionate about helping people know, live, and love the purpose of their finances. And we are excited to have Brian on the show today because we're going to talk all things financial. So don't tune out if you're like, me, who maybe finances wasn't always your strong suit, right? But we're getting better because this is a show where we're going to turn a page on how to be smarter with our finances. And we're going to talk about how to be good financial parents and help our children understand how to be smart financially. So Brian, welcome to the show. We're so happy to have you.
Hey, Leslie, Paige, thanks for having me. It's a privilege and honor to be here with y'all.
You bet. We're excited. So, Brian, why don't you kick it off by just telling us a little bit about your family, what you're passionate about, share a little bit about what you do as a speaker, a consultant, and a coach in this arena.
Sure. First and foremost, I'm a follower of Christ. So learned a lot about Jesus and how to live a life that would glorify him. And then I'm a husband to my wife, Becky. We've been married about 10 years now. And I have two little ones, Grayson, who just started first grade. He's almost 7 now. And then Ella, who will be 4 in less than, actually a week from today. And so then we have two little dogs. We live in Tampa, Florida. And yeah, I'm a speaker, consultant, and coach, like you mentioned, just serving both individuals and corporate clients, helping people to know, live, and love their purpose for their career and their finances. And really, just want to share one thing as we add to that. It's not so much the career and finances or life's purpose. For me, that was something I was like, let me climb the corporate ladder. Let me chase the dream of being rich and famous, Robin Leach and all that stuff. And realized that those are tools. The career and our finances we have are tools to help us accomplish our life purpose and more specifically, God's purpose. So
that's so good.
That's me.
Brian, were you always like into numbers and finances? Like, have you just lived the charmed life or what?
More like a third eye blind, semi-charmed life.
I'm loving, first of all, can I just say, I'm loving all the 80s and 90s references we've already had in the first 3 minutes of this show. So we're speaking my love language here. Keep going, Brian.
Yeah, it's like going to Disney and you're trying to spot like the little secret Mickeys. This is kind of what people can do in your pockets.
I love
sub something, whatever. Anyway, so no, Paige, no, I was not. I mean, basically what I was explaining to people really transparently, I was broke, busted, and disgusted. And even as a young man, about 29 at the time, making 6 figures and successful, managing half the state of Florida in my job, I just was just broke, busted, and disgusted. I didn't know how to manage the resources that I had at my disposal, and I chased the wrong things, and that landed me in a pit. And I really contemplated taking my own life, and it was not a charmed life. It might seem on the outside, but really inside, I was super struggling. And then I basically met Jesus as my Lord and Savior, and he picked me up from the pit, and he really like kind of grabbed me up by the back of my neck. It's kind of like a bear cub, gets done by the mama bear, and says, "Look, I got plans for you, man, and I'm not waiting anymore. This is taking too long." So he pulled me up out of the pit and set me up on a firm foundation, really, and rocking upright. And since then, my life has been forever changed, and that was 2007, January 1. 2007. So, and finances was the first kind of like the first laser, cut that he had to make to kind of clean me up. And once I realized that I could trust him with his word and how money works, that really grew my trust in him in many other life things, including then getting married some years later too. So,
which I can't take any credit for hooking that marriage up or whatever, but I did know Brian and I did know Becky, and we worked together at the church right around the time when you guys met. I was like, oh, look, it's perfect.
Yeah. Paige, you see me cry some tears on that conference room too. I want to be married.
Yes.
You know?
And we prayed you in a wife, and there she was. And talk, which it kind of goes to show you, there's the verse, and I can't quote it by numbers, but it, like those who are planted in the house of the Lord, like they're going to flourish. And you did get planted in God's house, and you did begin to flourish. So it's really awesome. It's really awesome.
Yeah, I appreciate it. I also cried tears of, this is hard, marriage is hard.
Yes.
So, wait till you're raising teenagers, Brian. You'll be crying again.
Thank you. Thanks for the encouragement.
Okay, well, speaking of teenagers, that's the season that Paige and I are in, and we would love to just kind of start there. How can we best equip these teens in our lives to be wise with their finances? Where do we start?
Yeah, sure. And I took some notes. And you guys, by the way, thank you for your due diligence that prompted me with these great questions y'all prepared. It really, was introspective for me, to really get not only serving today, your audience and you, but also just kind of for myself going, wow, all right.
Yeah, because they go from 3 years old, Brian, to 15, like overnight. I mean, it just happens so fast. So get ready. So prepare us.
People keep telling me that. I don't want to believe it though. But for me, I think it's ultimately how you prepare teenagers or any child is basically helping them know what I said earlier, that life's purpose includes finances, but it's not the be all end all goal, although we know it's so much in front of us every day. If you want something, it requires money. If you want to go do something, it requires finances. If you whatever, there's always something out there that's tied to a monetary value or consideration is involved for that. But I think ultimately, if we root our children or reroute or start now, wherever you're starting from, it's just to realize honestly that, money is a method or a tool to help you get what you want and do what you're supposed to do, but it's definitely not something to be chased after or to be loved, So that's one place. It's kind of like a mindset perspective, a starting place. But when it comes to specifically to equip, what's the purpose of money? What is money? Money is a value, something of value that we exchange for something else of value. Something we may have money, somebody else has that cheeseburger, right? I mean, as simple as that, right? Yeah. So we have X amount of dollars in our hand or whatever, and that cheeseburger says it's worth X amount of dollars to that vendor, and we just trade. So it's a means of exchange. We overcomplicate money too many times, and the world tries to do that for us too. And of course, the banking industry and all that, they use those what's called like techno babble. We don't need financial babble. The simple is they can only do three things with money: give it, save it, or spend it. Yeah. Just keep it simple.
That's good. So what are some of the common mistakes that you see people making in regards to their money and maybe, the way that they're sort of showing their kids what to do with finances?
Yeah, it's a great chance for me to tell a little bit of a story from a book that I've read called Thou Shalt Prosper. And it's called The 10 Commandments of Making Money. And basically it's written by...
Who is that by?
Yeah, go ahead. Paige, see if you got it. Ding, 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 ding.
I know. I feel like that was like a Perry Stone book or a... No, Thou Shalt Prosper. I feel like I've read that book a long, long time ago. Who's the author? Do you remember?
Yeah, his name is Rabbi Daniel Lapin.
Yes.
Yeah, okay. Daniel Lapin. And so he was at one point, maybe he still is today, but president of the Judeo-Christian Association, whatever that, in the world or in America here. But he talks about that money is simply certificates, right? Certificates of a job well done. So we think about for our kids, we've had like a star chart or a chore chart or, commissions. Some people say allowance, right? I used to get an allowance, but I like the commission word, that when you do something well, you get a certificate. Heck, that certificate could be a gift card, right? Or that certificate could be a chance to go spend extra time with friends or whatever. But in this case, we're talking about money. It's a certificate and for a job well done. So I go get my hair cut and they do a good job. I give them money, certificates, and that hair stylist or dresser or whatever you want to call it, depending on who you are or where you're at, would go to a steakhouse and get a steak. And then that server, it's just this currency, this flow. It's a means of exchange, but basically all it is that money is a certificate of a job well done.
Well, that's good. I love that. I love that analogy.
And any kid can understand that.
What's that? For sure.
I love that visual. I feel like that's a simple visual that all of us can. Yeah, you're just getting your certificate. And I want more certificates though, Brian. So
right.
Right. I would like to get some more certificates, and I know that my kids would as well.
Yeah, sure. And it's life skills, right? It's all life skills. It's to It's what I teach is seeking to serve. If you could seek to serve, I think Zig Ziglar said it, or one of those great guys of wisdom or gals of wisdom said that, when you serve enough people, money will find you, because
Mm,
that's one of the rewards that we get. And thank God it's not the only one, but it's one of them that we get.
Yeah.
that's really
So
good.
what are some things that I want to take us back a little bit to when God plucked you out of that pit? What are some things that, because I know there are people today that they're like, I'm in that pit right now. And
Right.
that's all great that you're talking about these things, but I don't know how the heck I'm going to put gas in my car in a little bit, or how I'm going to get groceries. So take us back. What are some things that what's a practical thing that somebody can do today? And what are some things that God did, or that you started doing that maybe the Lord instructed you to do to get out of that pit? Like, let's go back there.
Yeah, it's interesting. It seems so long ago, yet it seems just like yesterday.
Yeah.
Because anytime we turn a corner, right, that's something to be celebrated, and it doesn't matter what it is, right? So with regards to that question, is I remember back when I kind of said, yeah, I'm done with this. Like I'm done with the struggle. I just kind of brainstormed. So let's go backwards. Oh, I just came up with something. So first of all, let's take a breath. You know,
Yeah.
whether it's a breath that needs to last for a week or one you just quickly take. And then you kind of brainstorm like, hey, what, here's a simple equation. If I had my dry erase board here, I would say, what income do I have? What sources of income do I have? If any, I don't care what they are, right? And it may be nothing. Fine.
Yeah.
So you start brainstorming, what income do I have, or what kind of income sources do I have? And then you're going to look at what kind of expenses do I have. Usually for a lot of people, that's easier, right? Because that seems like every day there's something leaving us, leaving our wallet, leaving our bank account, whether they're commitments made or just everyday living things we need to live. So we're going to write that down. And a lot of times I remember looking back to that day, those days, as I would go back on my notes when felt like I was ready to make the change, I would forget things like food. Like I got all my expenses. I got my entertainment. That was first. I got my, my beer budget. That was second. I got my, whatever the case may
Yeah.
be. And I forget like food,
Yeah. You gotta eat.
because we're in this like chaotic thing and we can't see past our hands. And like,
Yeah.
so take a breath, start building a brainstorm, and then just kind of put that into like a Lego. Me and my son love Lego Masters, right? So you start building this foundation in like a budget or a money plan.
Mm.
And the last thing I would say to that is there's a 3 B's: breathe, brainstorm, and budget, although people don't love the budget word. So
Yeah.
let's just call it bricks for Lego bricks. And then you got to get a coach. You got to get someone that you can share it with. And if somebody doesn't have that, then maybe a church or someone not emotionally attached whatsoever to help them just run it by. Let me just run this by you. What does this look like to you? And that takes some humility, right? That definitely takes some transparency. It takes some courage, and you have to let go of the ego and the pride. And I was finally ready to do that, but for many years before, when I knew I had the problem, I wasn't ready.
Yeah.
Mm.
And I think this can also transition to teenagers too. They have money coming in somehow, some way, whether it's by opportunity, whether it's by Christmas came, a birthday came, something they did, a job well done for, they got a certificate. What money do they have flowing in? What
Yeah.
money do they have going out? What money do they want to have going out? That's okay to have stuff you want. And then what does that look like? Do I have money left over, or am I behind? And if I'm behind, what do I do to make it up? If I have money left over, give, save, and spend. That's it. Every person, no matter how old or how much money you have, when you receive a new dollar, it goes through the filter, especially if you're a believer: give, save, spend.
It's great, Brian. Do you have like just kind of with those three in mind, give, save, and spend, do you have sort of just at a minimum, it should look like this percent should
Yes.
give, this should be save, this should be spend?
Yeah, so that's
What's
great.
the
So
formula?
yeah, exactly. So, back in the day, maybe they still do it today. We want to remember something, we wrote it on our hand, right?
Yeah.
And so if I was going to write anything on my hand financially, because money's coming into my hand, 10, 10, 80.
Mm.
So you start with 10 in giving, you start with 10 in saving, and you spend the rest. So 10% giving, 10% saving, and 80% spending. And, it's kind of like chocolate chip cookies, right? So I did an elementary kids message years ago, and it could apply to any of us when we think we don't have enough, or, oh my gosh, like giving 10%, saving 10, spending 80. How do I do that? Well, so imagine you have 10 cookies, right, in a jar. and you gave one away to a friend, you saved one for a future date, and you got to eat 8, you're probably going to be sick. But you have 8. Like, what? Like, I didn't lose anything. You get the joy of sharing it with someone when you give it. You get the safety or security in your tummy mind that you can save one for later, and then you still have 8 to eat now if you want. I mean, come on. So I think it's that kind of simple mindset that we need to carry, that if we realize it's all God's money, right?
Yeah.
And even if you don't, giving's fun. I don't care who you are or what you believe. Saving is also security, and then you still have 80 left to spend. So, or 8 left to spend cookie wise.
8 cookies.
8 cookies. Cookies.
I'm gonna have to be going to make some cookies next too, Ryan. Now tell me about like with you and Becky when you got married. Now, did you start this financial turnaround before you got married?
Thank you, Lord. Yes.
Okay. And then tell us about how you and Becky worked that out in your marriage. Like, were you guys on the same page? Because there will be people listening that are like, yeah, I'm either a single parent or my spouse and we can't talk about money. Like give us some insider scoop and tips. Like, how do you and your wife, how do you handle the finances with each other?
Let's make no mistakes for anybody. I don't care what your situation, and no matter how much money you make. I mean, I've met with millionaires that still have the same struggle. Someone who is a single mom or single dad, or, lost a job. I mean, money is a struggle. Let's make no mistakes. So right out there, most people don't learn about it. So take the pressure off yourself. It's okay. If you're struggling, it's okay. You're not better or worse than anybody. You're probably more where most people are. And let's be honest, 80% of people live paycheck to paycheck. So there's a struggle there. 80% of the people. Look to your left, look to your right. 80%. There's someone in your group or down the line. And sometimes that's you. And it doesn't mean you have to stay there. You may just be visiting, right? So it's not your permanent address. You may be just Airbnb being struggle land, right? You're not staying there long term. So to answer your question is, I think for me and Becky, that was one thing that united us right out of the gate. We were both strong in our financial, how do you want to put it, literacy.
Mm-hmm.
Didn't mean we knew everything by any stretch, and I still don't, we still don't, but we at least had that common bond. Now, most people don't, many people, I should say, not most, many people don't have that.
Okay.
But for us, let's put it this way, there were other struggles. We both got married later in life. So while we were great financially, it was our own for many, many years. So that was our fight. Was one of the big breakthroughs we had is like, hey, we have this money that we put aside to have fun. We call it like fun money or pocket money or whatever. We learned that from Dave Ramsey's class. Yet we kept keeping it in the same envelope. And so she would spend $20 at one thing, and I would spend $20 on another thing, and I want to go spend another dollar, or she wanted to go spend another dollar. And we're like, well, where's that dollar? I had that in my mind earmarked in that envelope, but yet it was a joint envelope. So we realized, like, oh my gosh, are we that dense? Let's have separate pocket money envelopes. You have yours, I have mine.
Yeah.
It was just that little quarter turn. That's a big breakthrough. Just a little quarter turn that made a difference. And that was 8 years ago. It's made a huge difference. But addressing what you asked, Paige, about folks that maybe don't have that togetherness regarding money, someone's got to lead.
Okay.
And, a lot of times biblically, you read, well, the man's got to lead. Okay. Yeah, but God made us both in his image, and he's a leader.
Yeah.
He made us both male and female. He created us as leaders. Then one of us may be a better leader here. Like, hello, my wife, with empathy with the kids and all that stuff. Me, I'm like, oh no, just put them out there. Be like Nemo, just put them out there. But there's got to be a blend, right? So maybe if it's the woman's going like, I'm taking the reins of the finances, I'm going to do best with what I can. The husband's going to pick up on that eventually, you hope, and or vice versa. And then that leads the way when they start seeing things happening and taking off. But someone's got to start instead of the blame game of going, well, if he, well, no one's going to win. So we got to start somewhere. And again, for the single mom, or single dad, it's one of those things where about be resourced. You are resourced, especially in this country. There are so many resources, whether it's reading a book, attending a class, getting coaching, finding a friend, just starting working on something, finding an extra job, finding some benevolence at a time. Understand that you're resourced, and just be open to all opportunities to be resourced to do what God's called you to do. Again,
that's good.
In front of everybody, that's a place to start. I know there's more detail to that, but with the sake of time, we can't get into all that. So
that's great. I know just, having, working in the church world, there's so many great resources available for people, like financial boot camps and Financial Peace University. So we'll link some of those resources in our show notes today. So if you're looking for something like that, you'll be able to find those there. We'll also provide some links to Brian's business and his resources. And there's an awesome video on his website that shares more detail about he and Becky's story, which I think is just so inspiring. Both Paige and I were just talking, Brian, about like, man, we're like, yes, we received the testimony. I mean, so there's a lot of your story that I can relate to, just kind of, my pre, not my pre-Jesus life, but just my me season. I call it the Leslie show season of just grow, like climbing the corporate ladder and earning the 6-figure income and doing all the things, but at the end of the day, having nothing to show for it. And, and feeling like, why, where is all of it going? And my husband loves to say, hey, the more we make, the more we just seem to spend. So we've learned we're just in a season of our life, like, even though the income is maybe not what it once was in our sort of, pre serving our lives for Jesus days, we are more financially secure than we've ever been. We are, happier and healthier and more at peace than we've ever been. And we're able to take greater risks in being extravagant givers because we've kind of turned the situation up, we've turned the situation right side up, but to the world, it looks very different. And so, but it took time to get there. I meet with people all the time, just in my role in, serving in our church and talking about tithing, and the whole 10% thing, I think, is really intimidating to people when they look at the big number. I love that you just talked about the whole cookie analogy, because if you just think about it like that, it really doesn't seem like that much. But I really believe, God just when we begin to just start with something, right?
Yeah.
Maybe you can't start at 10%, start with 1% and just see what God does with your faithfulness at 1%. And then when what our adage is like, when that becomes too easy, then we increase it. And then when that becomes a little easier, then we increase it. And over time in our marriage, we were able to get to where we're giving above 10%, but we didn't start there. Right. And it's not something that I'm bragging about. It's because we had to analogy. I don't know if this is a Dave Ramsey analogy or not, but I've heard a teaching that like every baby is born with a closed fist. And when we think about the idea of having a closed fist in our finances, that's how we are with our money. We are born with a closed fist. We want to hang on to it. Right. And as we begin to trust God with our finances and recognizing that everything that we have ultimately came from him in the first place, and it's our responsibility to give it back to him, he like slowly, begins releasing our grip off of our finances until we have an open-handed posture with what he's given us. And so I just want to encourage people, like, don't be intimidated by the 10%. See it as an opportunity to get there, but start somewhere.
Well said. I think you'd start with a chocolate chip. That's fine.
Yeah,
and,
exactly.
God doesn't need our money. It's one of those things that it's a privilege, and it's like the great experiment. Let's see if I can trust these people with my money.
Seriously.
So
yeah,
I love that.
So Brian, I'm in one of your favorite college towns, Clemson in South Carolina. If y'all could see Brian's face.
Although we did beat them last year, so it was payback.
Tell everyone what your alma mater is.
The Ohio State University.
I love that.
Which we did not say the back in the day, so I don't know where that started, but we just said Ohio State.
Cracks me
up.
Well,
okay, so I'm around all these college students, and I feel like my kids are going to be there in no time at all. Like I told you earlier, I blinked. Mine were like just 3 and 4 yesterday, and now they are almost 17 and almost 16. Like, what in the world? So what are some things that we can do preparing our kids for college? And what are some of the resources that you have an awesome resource, which I printed out, by the way, the 7 ways in 7 days to change your financial future forever, which is awesome. I can't wait to like really dive into it. But what are some of the other resources that parents can equip their kids? Because I know, like, I'm like, oh my goodness, my son's a junior. What have I done? Like, is he ready? Like, is he ready to launch? I don't know. So
sure.
Help me out,
I think,
Brian.
I think, it's definitely not the same. It's different strokes for different folks, right? Not everyone's driven by the same kinds of things, right? And again, back to the idea of that, stuff isn't bad. It's when, of course, we've heard this stuff has us. That's when it's bad, right? That's not how it's supposed to work. So I
Right.
think it's one of those things. There was a cool money book. I forget what it is, like your money mindset or something like that. Like what's your money language? Almost like
Okay.
what's the love language? I don't know if that's the name of it, but it sounds like it should be. But everyone has kind of a disposition or an attitude about money. And I think it's just having that money conversation over time with our children, as opposed to trying to drive it all home and like, today we're gonna have the money talk.
Yeah.
And so kind of just watch them and observe. And I think it almost like it sounds kind of studious, but or clerical, but you kind of before you even have the talk, like what have I observed about my kid over the years about their disposition towards money, towards possessions, that kind of thing, before you have the talk. And then the tool that you need for after the talk may look different. For one, it might be, well, man, like my little man Grayson, he is motivated. Like, so he's been struggling with going into school by himself. It's a brand new school here in Odessa, and it's like this big campus. It looks like 90210 for elementary. I'm like, I would have loved to have this as a kid. That was for you, Leslie. But
Thanks, Brian.
so you got it. But so he's like, even this week, Tuesday, he was like heels in the ground, not going. Wednesday, he walked with an older kid. Yesterday and today, he's like, peace out, Dad. I'm like,
Yeah.
what happened? This was just 4 days ago. He was screaming, and I said an expletive. Sorry to say, Lord, I confess in front of my sisters in Christ that I was like, I can't believe this. He's like a great kid. What does he not want to go out and go to school? All that to say is, he's motivated. Is your kid motivated? What are they motivated by? What little carrot could you use, and not in a manipulative way, but as a goal, as a driven way to capture what they should about money and to go after it? Some might just be, money's about giving. Who
Yeah.
can we go give? I'll pick on Claire Page. Claire,
Yeah.
who can we go give money today to that you think is needy?
Yeah.
Well, guess what? If they capture that, well, Claire, you're gifted to make the money, but you're also gifted to give it. How do we help you get more of it so you can give more of it? So it's
Right.
just kind of noticing what that looks like and having that conversation. But as parents, I think we do a little homework ahead of time before we sit down and try to push that message.
Right. Oh, that's
Man,
good.
that's so good. So I have a son. We both Paige and I, both her oldest and my oldest are very entrepreneurial in spirit. And
There you go.
it's been really interesting to watch as they've, become teenagers, kind of how both of them are kind of finding their own ways of being entrepreneurial and earning money, and like having a little bit of a savings and figuring out ways to be, creative. So I appreciate you saying that, because I do think it's important as parents that kind of what our motivations are financially are not going to be the same for our kids. And so we need to be I love that whole idea of thinking of the love languages. It is sort of a unique imprint that each of us have, sort of what motivates us, and kind of how we approach those things with our kids. So that's a great suggestion. So
Awesome.
yeah, I just think I'd love to wrap up maybe today's conversation by hearing a little bit about like what's inspiring you right now. And, tell us maybe a little bit about some of your recent financial goals, your personal financial goals, if you want, that you've achieved, and what's maybe the big, scary, audacious financial goal that you have for yourself or your family right now.
Yeah. So one of the preparatory questions, thank you, is good. You said, what, I'll answer it this way. What was what was the most recent purchase you made, or this year, or something
Yes.
that was really fun
Yeah.
for you?
Yes.
Well, I'll tell you what we bought is we believe, again, this is for us. And that's one thing real quickly I'll say is like money is not the same for everyone. We just talked about that with our kids, right? Same thing for adults. Like anything I have to say, it's not going like, well, this is the way. No, thank God it's not. My way is like, what's right for you? What makes you, I'm not saying comfortable in a negative sense, like but what's the right thing for you? So for us, me and Becky, we decided to sell our home that was, we believe, we found out later, that was way too big for us. Just like there's a lot to take care of. We felt like it was stealing from our joy or stealing from our time or experiences with our kids. So instead of one of the things I bought, it's one of the things we sold. And we sold our home that was quite large for us, like I just said. And then we decided to go more, put the money in the bank so that we can rebuild a home, paying cash, 100% cash is our hope. That's our prayer and our hope, to build a home that's in a better lot, a better something that's more gives us a preserved kind of feel. Just because, again, I may not have on Golden Pond until I'm, 68, but right now, can we have something, Lord, if it's in your will, can we have something that will allow us to do that? And that means we got to save a couple $100,000. I'm just being honest with you,
Yeah.
So we have sold our home. We profited from that Thank you, Lord, for that opportunity. And what does it look like for us to save? Which means there's a lot of sacrifice. I
Yeah.
don't want to sacrifice anything. I just want it now. I want all my cookies and more. So that's kind of like the big goal. And so you can't see it, but I have on my dream board here, being generous is up top, Christ is in the center, and then our family. So what experiences do we have that we want to get after? And maybe God might say, yeah, you thought it was the home, but I showed you a different way. It's not.
Yeah.
But at least we're leaning into something. And we believe that saved cash is better than spent cash, because saved cash can be spent any way it can be spent. But once it's gone, or saved cash can be spent any way it can be spent. But once it's gone, it's gone.
Yeah.
So
are you in your transition to building, are you in a rental then, or what did you do?
Yeah. So that's a great question, Paige, because a lot of people go, well, renting's dumb. No, renting's not for us ideal. But while we're waiting, we're not locked in to something longer than a year. As a matter of fact, we negotiated with the owners. I love private owners, meaning not renting from a corporation, where you can negotiate, you can navigate, negotiate, you can talk about this, you can paint a wall and they'd be okay with it. You can change this or change that. But also we negotiated a 9-month lease in case so we have an option that if we decided to build pretty quickly, or the money came our way pretty quickly, we can start building and know that we're not locked into a year. And they said, okay, so it's in the lease. I mean, so there's just things like that if you don't ASK, you won't GET.
Yeah.
And that includes asking him upstairs too. So.
That's the truth. Okay. So building a new house. So is that your big, scary, audacious goal, is getting this new house, and paid in cash? Or is there another one that you're pursuing? A big dream?
Leslie, you talked about some things. We talked offline a little bit earlier about some stuff, and Paige, I know your things you're going after too, with having our own businesses. I really truly believe that America is built on small business, and has been, although it's not always right in front of us. Like we see all these big Fortune 500 companies and stuff, but you got to start somewhere. None of those companies started number one, per se. So for us, it's cash flowing business ideas that we have. Okay. So for Becky, it's a home design or decor at events and things like that. That's her lane. You guys both know that from knowing her. And then for me, it's speaking, consulting, and coaching. And the blessing with both of us is in our business, we don't have to have a lot of overhead. Mm-hmm. So that makes the cash, being less cash to go. We both have LLCs, but I think really driving that home this year. And again, being entrepreneurial in spirit, but also being generous as well. I have the gift of gab. Becky has the gift of generosity, and together we're out there helping people. So
I love that. You guys know your lane and you're running in it, and it's awesome. So
it's not easy.
Not easy, but it's good. Man, Brian, this has been so awesome to have you on the show today. Thank you so much for just giving us some of your time, your wisdom, your experiences, good, bad, and all the stuff in between, right? And how God's brought you to this point right here. It's definitely inspiring, I think, both Paige and myself. And I know our listeners are really going to appreciate hearing from you. So we'll put all the links to the things that Brian shared today in our show notes, so you can find out more about him and some of the resources that he's mentioned today. So Brian, thank you so much again for being with us today.
Yeah.
You got it, Paige. Leslie, blessings. Thanks for serving people, and pleasure to be teaming up with you. Teamwork makes the dream work.
It does.
Right. Thank you.
All right. We'll see you guys next time. Bye. Well, that closes another chapter on the Page of Our Lives podcast. Did you know we're on Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube? Well, we are. Just search for Page of Our Lives podcast. Curious where to find things we mention on the show? Check out our show notes on our website, pageofourlivespodcast.com. And if you liked today's episode, be sure and share it with a friend. And we would love for you to leave a rating or a review in your podcast player. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you next time.